move on to Brenda Johnson.
Thank you. I have always said all along that we need to seriously upgrade our HSR in order to sustain this LRT. Since that time, we had our 10-year transit strategy, and along with that was a $300 million ask to the province to help us accomplish that. So through you, probably to John Mader, to bypass, sorry, Paul. So through you to John Mader, when we lost the $300 million ask, how impactful was that for our 10-year strategy that was supposed to be upgrading our HSR to sustain the LRT?
Through the Deputy Mayor, that was a significant component. That is a significant component of the whole 10-year strategy. That having some place to house the buses to run that strategy out of is key to it. And so we're still working through that. That's not a dead end yet. That's not anything that we've stopped trying to accomplish. But it is a significant hill to climb, I guess.
Thank you, and it is a significant piece to this project. The other thing that I always had concerns about, and at the invitation of the Oakville mayor, and I'm sorry I can't tell you the exact date, it was at least 3 years ago. We can't go back in my system to get the time. But Oakville at that time was housing the CEO for Metrolinx of the day, and he was answering questions about LRT and doing a short presentation. At that time, I asked the CEO of Metrolinx, who will maintain it, who will hire the employees, pay the employees, who collects the fares, and paraphrasing, the bottom line was, we don't know yet. Now let's fast forward 3 years later, and the answer I've been hearing around the table, because you've answered it more than once, is we don't know yet. So that is also a concern for me as well. So I just want to put that out there to you, Paul. But I do have some questions from your presentation, if you don't mind. Just want to go through the list. If you can go to, are you calling this slide 1?
Slide 2, but that's...
Okay, so can you go to slide 4, please?
Route?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm to assume that each one of those circles is an LRT stop.
Correct.
Thank you. So when I look at Kenilworth to Ottawa, Ottawa to Scott Park, Sherman to Wentworth, and I know this is a very vague map, but I'm using my little pen and I'm counting how many blocks in between each one. And potentially we could be looking at anywhere from 12 to 15 city blocks between stops. Would that be fair to say?
Through the Deputy Mayor, at times it may be those blocks, but blocks are not always the same distance apart. So we have been working not in terms of blocks, but in terms of actual distance. And so that's where we come up with that statement that it's 600 to 800 meters overall. The one, very clearly that's longer than that is Ottawa to Scott Park.
Right.
And then the other piece is not the Dunder and the Longwood, because there's nothing to stop at there, but Longwood to McMaster.
Right.
The others, it may be sometimes the map, and when the more detailed drawings come out, we'll actually insert various pieces. But Trevor, we're in terms of the blocks that you're looking at, even a Wentworth to Sherman piece, we're still within that sort of 800 as an outside amount, correct?
Through the chair to the councillor, correct. And typically when you talk about rapid transit systems around the world, it's that 800 meter mark that you have stop spacing, and that makes it rapid, reliable, efficient. If you start reducing, not to say that we can't look at different opportunities, and that's what we've done in the downtown, and we have a shorter stop spacing because it's more of a destination.
Sorry, Trevor, I can't hear you very well.
Sorry, I'll try and speak up. Sorry about that. When we're looking at the downtown, we've actually looked at reduced stop spacing just because of the destination focus. But again, when we look at rapid transit systems around the world, they're typically around that 800 meter, which is a 10-minute walk, and this is consistent with our previous design that went through the EA 4 years ago as well.
Okay, thank you. So this 10-minute walk is for the able. This is for someone who's fit that can walk the 800 meters with no problems, correct?
Through the chair to the councillor. Correct. I believe that's a typical 10-minute walk for an able-bodied person.
Thank you. And it's my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, that the HSR has a policy in place that it's 300 to 400 meters? 400 meters? So we're actually doubling the amount of space from one stop to the other, just to be clear.
Through the chair to the councillor. That's correct for an enhanced rapid transit. It's not to say that when you look at the system as a whole, that council has adopted service standards for the HSR so that at least every resident in kind of the urban transit area is at least covered by a 400-meter stop spacing.
Thank you. Paul, can you go to, I'm sorry, I forgot to count. Can you just go to the one that the picture slide that says 403 to downtown? Thank you. During your discussion at this point, you were talking about the curbs, and now have somewhere along the lines that there will be a right in, right out, or left in, left out, depending, but right in, right out. So you used Cameron as a benchmark, and I'll stick with that. If I'm traveling on Cameron from north to south, I can go across all the cross streets. I can go across King. I can go across, I think it stops at Main. But I can go across all these. So theoretically, and this is to piggyback onto Councillor Kelly's remark, is that even though it's a right in, right out, and there's a list of streets you're going to be pinpointing, what about the ones that you can actually cross north to south? Because when you block off certain streets that can't go directly north to south, that makes an impact on the neighboring streets, because they're now going to use those streets, the ones that are more accessible, north southbound. So the ones that don't allow that easy, that all-way access into their street, they're going to see a significant traffic decrease. And the ones who can go across and across and across, they're the ones that are going to see an increase, because people have to go there if they want to go from King to Main, or from even all the way from Main up to Barton. So do you have a list of those as well that are going to be actually end up being more arterial than residential?
Through the Deputy Mayor, yes, you'll see all of that information. I can tell you that we're not opening up some what I'll consider side streets. So if I'm not opening another Cameron, and our suggestion is not that something adjacent to Cameron is the one that you go through on. It would be a major road that's used more to move traffic north-south now. So Kenilworth, Ottawa. There are some that may be not today seen as some of those major routes north to south, but we're not opening up some side streets to flow through traffic to allow them to go north-south. Along this route, if you wish to travel across King Street, either moving south to north or north to south, it would be right out, and then you're hitting a U-turn somewhere at, maximum, you're probably going 500 or 600 meters, and then you're hitting a U-turn to go around to the other side if you needed to do that, or you're adjusting your route altogether. Okay, thank you for that. Also, you said at this particular time that EMS can bump the curb. They can ride over the curb and go. Are you suggesting that they can actually travel along where the tracks are? The Deputy Mayor, if they needed to, that's what we're looking at. Because, of course, in some of the areas, with one lane of traffic on either side, you could get into a situation with how would the traffic actually allow for that emergency vehicle to move through. So we'll have to operationalize that with EMS and fire and the police, but our preliminary conversations with them have been to use this if they absolutely needed to. And Trevor was in on some of these specific working group meetings that we've been having with various departments, so I'll ask him to add any further context to that. That'd be fun to watch, Trevor? Train coming in the opposite direction?
Through the chair to the councillor, that's correct. So it does provide, the corridor does provide a nice corridor actually for EMS, and because there won't be any stop vehicles in their way, so they can actually have a clear run at it, and they will have to observe other LRTs coming in the opposite directions. But again, LRT is operated by line of sight, so the LRTs could also stop when they see fire truck coming or something like that.
Okay, thank you. As in all our wards, we all have construction happening in one form or another. In particular, Bimbrook Village is in a big upheaval right now because from one end to the other, it's just one big massive construction. It's only going to be from start to finish 2 years. My understanding, listening to your presentation, it's going to be a lot more than just 2 years. It's going to be a lot longer, this construction zone. I've had many businesses over the 5 years I've been in this office who have come to me and said, you've just ripped up Brimel Road. My business has literally sunk dramatically. So what can you do to either compensate me or compensate me for the road that you're doing? It's caused me to almost go out of business. What have we, if anything, put in place for the businesses that are along this corridor that's going to be facing probably longer than a 2-year, probably up to a 5-year project, who simply cannot sustain the lack of business due to the construction?
So through the Deputy Mayor, in terms of the length of the construction process, you're quite right. Start to finish of the whole project, it's that length of time. That's not to suggest that a particular segment would be under construction with, limited or no traffic for the entire 5 years. This will, there will be sections. I can't say it's going to move from east to west in an orderly fashion, because where the work is hardest and where the work will take the longest, they'll have to start there and do some of that underground work. In terms of what we're doing for business, nothing changes from the fact that we can't provide just a pure compensation for lost business, as we don't with any of the construction projects. However, there's an investment strategy that Metrolinx uses with all the projects around how to work with businesses. Be it around communications, be it around signage. The city, can also work in terms of how can we free up opportunities if it's about parking or signage. How can we ensure that we're not a barrier to people being able to access buildings? And within the contract for the building and with the consortium, Metrolinx has a program called Doors Open or Open Doors Matters, or it's words to those effects, which means that we don't want to close the doorways to businesses because of the construction. You can't sit all the equipment in front of all the doors, so there has to be access for people to get into those throughout the whole process. Finally, if there is, for any reason, some direct impact of construction that causes damage and causes losses that need to be compensated for, Metrolinx will follow their process, and I think that businesses have up to a year to claim for certain things under that. And maybe, Andrew, if you want to talk just a little bit more, I think I butchered the open doors thing. I think I'm thinking of Doors Open Hamilton too much, but you may have just a bit more on what we do for businesses.
Thanks, Paul. Through the chair, I'd just say a couple of pieces. We can maybe come back at some point and provide a more thorough presentation with our Director of Communications and Community Relations, Jamie Robinson, who leads this work on our behalf. But basically, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. We work very closely with the businesses in a given corridor. We're doing this on our projects on Eglinton, Crosstown, and Toronto, and we'll be doing so on Finch and here, Ontario, and Mississauga. We work with BIAs, we work with individual businesses, and we try to come up with programs that help promote the businesses, marketing support, event support, things like that, to help businesses promote themselves during construction and help the public understand that the businesses are still open, buy local campaigns, that type of thing. And as Paul mentioned, in the agreement we'll sign with the consortium that will build the project, there's a component of that agreement called Door Access Matters, which is all about ensuring that during the construction period, businesses in the corridor, customers can access those businesses, and we minimize any interruptions to that access. So.
Final piece through the Deputy Mayor that was mentioned a bit earlier by, I think it was Councillor Green. We're actually doing a proactive approach to every property owner on the line. Most of those are businesses, and ensuring that communication is provided about what's going on and linking particular businesses that have specific questions with appropriate staff, and that will happen twice a year through the duration of this project.
Thank you, and that was a segue into my next question. Reading the Light Rail Transit Subcommittee report, the latest one from May the 2nd. But I got more information from the local newspaper that we're looking at expropriating 250 properties.
So through the Deputy Mayor, when asked what the magnitude of property impact was, it's in the order of 250. 180 or so of that is small portions of property for right-of-way, what we call shavings. It might be corners. It might be making sure that we actually can get our depth of sidewalks. So if we're at 1.3 on a sidewalk, we need to get to at least 1.5 or a little bit more. We may take a piece of that. The remaining pieces at this point could be up to full property take. And you get into the complicating factor of if you run into a building on a property, it becomes problematic to only take partial of that if a building's impacted, but not impossible sometimes. So we are talking about property acquisition, not necessarily expropriation. Experiences on other projects are that there is decent percentages of the properties that negotiate this, and in terms of the shavings, that's probably easier to deal with than the full property takes. So that's the order of magnitude, but until we get to the detailed design work, we can't confirm the exact numbers because they will change as we get a little more detailed. Last thing I'll say on that, of course, is that Metrolinx is acquiring all the properties, and if necessary, they will be the expropriating authority, not the City of Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you. So in other words, out of the 250 properties, approximately 180 is really for simple man's terms, is road widenings. It's just to allow the space. When I go through the International Village, it would be very hard for me to understand where exactly are we going to take that road allowance when it looks like the sidewalk's straight up against the door. 70 properties then will have to be expropriated in whole, entirety. If you take the 180 minus the 250, I'm coming up with 70.
Through the Deputy Mayor, acquired in some capacity, yes.
Acquired in some capacity.
That's our, and I have to say that is the early estimate. Asked if we had some order of magnitude, that's it. That number may change.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions for now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.